Good morning. We welcome you to the second of our unit record report training sessions. We have with us this morning Carla Idle-Corwin, Senior Associate Director for Student Financial Aid, and Marla Skelly, who is our Associate Director for Compliance. And my name is Ann Voiles. I'm Program Associate for the Unit Record Program. Before we get started, I do want to mention that we are going to be recording this session, and we have currently placed everyone on mute so that we can get a good quality recording. Periodically, we will unmute and ask for questions, so I'm hoping that you'll be prepared for that when we come to those points. If you have any questions in the interim, you should have a chat box down at the bottom of your little pop-up control screen, and you can place your questions there at any point, and we will be monitoring for that in order to answer your questions as we go along. With that, I'm going to turn this program over to Carla.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us for today's session. Just a little bit of my background. I have worked on a campus for a couple of decades and done many unit record reports from the campus perspective, and have been here with the council for just over 4 years, a couple of years of those working with unit record. So I can relate kind of to both sides, although it has changed over time. So hopefully we can keep you up to date and keep the process moving smoothly. This is the 50th year of the unit record. It's the same age as the Washington State Need Grant Program, which will be, as you know, changing or has changed to the Washington College Grant. However, in this presentation, you'll hear us refer to it as State Need Grant because you are reporting on 2018-19 data. The purpose of the unit record report is for us to be able to do institutional comparisons across the state, measure the needs of students, and our agency relies heavily on this data when we're advocating on behalf of students to the legislature and policymakers. We also do look at unmet need and identify where there may be gaps, and we use the data to do modeling with the different financial aid programs to see what changes could impact which program and which students. And it gives us a centralized data repository so that you all and our agency don't get as many ad hoc data requests when we can present an overall package. There's a rough timeline. No, it's not rough. It's a real timeline before you on the screen. And the 2018-19 manual is available and live. We had a little glitch the other day, but I was in there this morning, so I know it works. And the unit record reporting application actually will open on the 12th. So we encourage you to please, please, please don't wait. As soon as you possibly can start loading your data, please do so and submit. Don't wait till October 7th. It allows us to start vetting your data and working with you if we have any follow-up questions along the way. And it does close October 7th, which is about 2 weeks before WAFA, so we're hoping to be able to be ahead of the curve and be doing our analysis both in October and November. We get lots of requests for data, usually starting around November, December, and so it's really important that this is all wrapped up and the data vetted and clean so that we can produce quality information and data. Your access to the actual unit record is in the portal, and if you need any assistance in accessing that, please reach out to our office if you're having access issues. The manual itself is broken up into essentially 4 sections. Not going to read all those to you, but it is really important that you get to know the appendices especially, because that gives you your file layout and your data definitions. I know personally my favorite 2 appendices are B and C. What's the file layout? Because if you are off on that and try to load it, it does not work. And then your system edits, of course, that can prevent your file upload and import. When you're building your file, you're not required to report for students receiving only non-need-based funds, with the exception of federal loans. We are still asking for federal loan data. And you're going to be reporting data for students who filed a FAFSA or a WSFA. And we do have a sample CSV file on our website that we produce every year. And so the current CSV did not change from last year to this year. However, be aware that for 2019-20, there will be changes coming, and I'll talk about those in a moment. When you're figuring out which students to report, so we're trying to make sure that when you're reporting that you get all the right students with the right information into this report. 3 categories of students are your need-based students who filed a WSFA or a FAFSA, need-based students that may or may not file a WSFA, which could include opportunity scholarship, Get Ready for Math and Science, or opportunity grant, and then, of course, your non-need-based federal loans. Those are the 3 buckets. When you're reporting your need-based recipients, please make sure that you're reporting them term by term. Next year, your unit record will be based, of course, on the 19-20 FAFSA. The current year is based on, and WSFA. Current year is based on 18-19. It's always a challenge when you're already into the next year, but we're still reporting on the prior year. Sometimes people get confused. So when you're extracting your data, make sure it's your 18-19. The programs that you're going to be reporting on are listed on the screen in front of you. And as you'll notice, the state work study on and off-campus students must have a valid work authorization. So just one caveat for that one. And then our teacher shortage conditional grant program was not funded in 18-19, but future funding could be possible. So that's why you may see some programs that have zeros, but then they come back to life, because that does happen. Other need-based programs are listed on the screen in front of you. And we're really trying to capture, the reason we're asking for all of this information is to capture a complete picture of student aid. You're also requesting that you report your BFET students. If your college receives the funds, you would report them under the worker retraining bucket of data. Again, your non-need-based loans, any of the federal loans is what we're asking for, even the unsub. And the changes, we do highlight the changes for the 18-19 unit record report on page III in the manual. And we try to point those out so there's no surprises. The main one is that there is a non-overrideable edit that was added for the current year, so that if you did not have a state work study allocation, you can't enter state work study awards. And that just prevents some wrinkles along the way. You will, this year again, receive a list of any unserved student that did not show up on the unit record for you to review and respond why they were reported on unserved. And that's really to get at cleaner data. So it may be that you reported somebody as unserved who never really should have been reported in that manner, and so it'll cause you to have to correct that data. Looking ahead to 19-20, we've been talking about these changes in a variety of trainings and sessions, but just making sure that you know that in preparation for 19-20, we are going to be adding several new fields, and our goal is to get this communication out probably within the next month or so, so that developers have time to implement the changes going forward. And there's a list of fields there. Probably the biggest time saver is going to be the ICER-WSFA transaction number. I know last year many of you had to go back and provide us with ICER-WSFA transaction numbers that you paid on at your campus when you were overriding comments, and we'll have to have you do that again for 18-19, because that is the only way we can validate eligibility when it kicks out on our side. But again, 19-20, it'll be in the file, so you won't have to go back and dig for that. We are trying to clean up those that have gone away, and that'll be the federal Perkins. Again, this is for 19-20 federal Perkins, and the Get Ready for Math and Science, You will see some labeling changes over time. We're using SNG/WCG interchangeably throughout as the transition occurs, but that will happen for 1920. There has only really been one valid input range change, and that has to do with Perkins being zeroed out. When you're reporting, it's really important that your enrollment status coincides with the level that aid was dispersed at. For example, if you have a student who is enrolled in 15 credits, which would normally be considered full-time, however, they're taking 5 credits that do not apply to their financial aid eligibility, and you're paying them at 10 credits as a 3/4 time student, it's critical that you report 10 credit, you report the 3/4 time enrollment to go with the award that matches. The header row is really critical in your CSV file, and if you don't put it there, you will have upload issues. Another component that can pop up has to do with those of you who may be attempting to report for 5 terms. So for example, clock hour schools traditionally have 5 terms. However, we do have some institutions, some credit-based institutions, that either A, are transitioning from a header to a trailer school, or may have certain funds that they award in both Summer 1 and Summer 2. And if that is the case and you attempt to make those entries and the system does not allow you to do that, you will need to reach out to us because we do actually have to do some IT intervention to make that happen. We do ask that you report the aid in the term that they received it for. So if you have a student who is receiving aid in Summer 2, you don't just report it to Summer 1 in Summer 1 because that's easier. We need it to actually match. And when another unique piece is when you have mini terms within a term. So for example, if you have a summer term that has 1, 2, or 3 mini terms, you need to lump those all together and report them in one enrollment term. Oftentimes, workforce training type funding will show up in Summer 1 and can show up in Summer 2 as well. And so just making sure that you report it where it was paid and for the enrollment level. The fields that we ask for you to report are listed above, pretty common. And some glitches that can occur as you're trying to do uploads is if you have duplicate Social Security numbers, that file is not going to upload. If there are comparison issues with state need grant and college bound, sometimes we have to, you have to alert us, and then we have to file a ticket to have them merged. And that's so that the student's quarters of eligibility are tracked accurately as well. So please make sure if you have those that the numbers have to match between unit record and CSAW data. Ann is your expert to help resolve those issues, and so you will reach out to Ann for assistance with any of those. The year in school chart gives you a definition of where they fit, and you report the year in school status as of the beginning of the last term that the student received money. So you could potentially have a student who is transitioning years in the middle of a year. And if that student received money that term that they became, let's say, a junior from a sophomore, you would report them as a junior. Please do not use what is reported on the FAFSA or the WSAC. As we know, students get confused about what year in school they are. Again, we do ask that you report the highest year in school for which a student received funding and link it to that last term that they received money. Code 8 is specifically for Running Start and non-high school graduates, primarily used when you're giving them some of your need-based aid. When you are reporting your family size, again, the data has to align across the unit record, CSAW, and the FAFSA WSAC data. So you could get edits that you'll need to dig a little deeper into to see why that is or is not matching. Your family income, please don't report with dollar signs or cents. and this is the only location in your data file that negative numbers can be reported. And we will clarify in a future slide what specific data elements constitute income for dependent versus independent students. That is a large area of confusion for many. The expected family contribution is really important that if you have done professional judgment and or made corrections on a student's FAFSA and or need to have them done on the WSFA, it's really important that it's processed through the appropriate channels. And in the very near future, we will actually have correction capability on the WSFA as we begin the 19-20 academic year. But for 18-19, that had to have been initiated by the student. And make sure that you do resubmit those through the processes and get back your document and report based on that transaction number. When you're working with the cost of attendance, we recognize there are many scenarios that students bring to campuses, so there's lots of different budgets. And it's important that your cost of attendance, need duration, and expected family contribution figures are for the same number of months. So if you change one of the elements, then you change all three of the elements. In the need amount, you cannot report negative values, so it would have to be a 0. In the need duration, again, make sure that you are, if you have a 9-month award and then the student leaves after 1 term, you are not required to recalculate everything to a 3-month duration. But if you do 1 figure, you need to do all 3 figures and report accordingly. And we're just asking for consistent data over all 3 elements. The enrollment statuses are listed on the slide in front of you. Nothing new here. The primary one is making sure that we're tracking on the correct QERs for our students. Clock error schools likely will have 5 terms to report, and you can see how their terms are defined, which are a little different than the credit hour. When you are reporting your awards for state need grant and college bound and passport, please make sure that you're actually reporting the enrollment level at the time of disbursement. So if a student adjusts their enrollment, but they were still paid full-time and academic progress kicks in, please make sure you report based on the disbursement. And Anne will eventually review how to respond to these edits a little bit later in the presentation. We do ask that you report your tuition waivers. As you know, state need grant and college bound are tied to tuition and fees, the award amounts are, and therefore it's important that we're capturing the full picture, and you can report them as either need-based or non-need-based depending on the type of assistance a student received. When you're reporting state work study, please make sure that you do report on and off-campus awards separately, and that you are reporting the gross award amounts, not net. When you're reporting your institutional gift aid, it will fall into 2 buckets. Need-based if it's based on a WSFA or a FAFSA, non-need-based if it's not required that the student file a WSFA or a FAFSA. There are other types of state aid that are not reported elsewhere, and they're listed on the screen in front of you. There are some programs that are still in existence but kind of quiet, such as Washington Scholars, but it still exists. And then there are some smaller programs that spread across the state. So making sure that you're reporting all of those if you happen to be a campus with students receiving any of those types of funds is greatly appreciated. And we'll pause here for questions and open the mic if there's any questions.
Okay, the mic is now open, and we will entertain any questions you have. Alrighty, hearing none, we'll go ahead and remute.
Well, hello. I'm Marla, and as Anne said, I'm the Associate Director for Compliance, and have been with WSAC going on, oh my goodness, I'll be finishing my 2nd year. Prior to that, I have worked in around the financial aid community, either in a school or in other kinds of work over the last, 30 years or so. So it's been a while. Anyway, I'm here to talk to you about edits on the unit record. And the reason we have these edits is because it helps ensure the data quality of the information you're submitting. Edits for things like students receiving only non-need-based federal loans are considered a little bit softer than some that will stop the loading process, or those edits that you need to respond to. FAFSA-related edits are also softer for students not receiving any FAFSA or WASPA required aid types. So, reiterating what Carla said, the appendices are your friend. And in Appendix C, there's a list of 12 items that will prevent your file from uploading. If you have any of those 12 stated edits, your file won't upload, and you'll need to make sure that you correct those edits. Some of those examples are your header row is missing or invalid. Make sure that things are spelled correctly. Duplicate SSNs, any invalid codes, and blanks that are reported in the required fields. You can take a look at that on page 45 of Appendix C, and they'll make sense to you because they're the things that we need, and they've got to be accurately depicted. So some non-overrideable edit examples, and just to give you a non-overrideable edit must be corrected before you can move forward. So if your file upload worked because you cleared any edits that you did have stopping the upload, then there will be some secondary edits run, and they will require you to correct the student record before you can submit. And these are listed on pages 46 to 48 in the manual. Things like total aid reported is 0, non-resident with SNG or other state aid. And we do get this particular edit, and you need to correct it before you can go forward. And as Carla mentioned, the non-valid institutional SWS allocation in the portal, which is a new non-overrideable edit. You'll need to touch base, get that taken care of before you can go forward. Overrideable edit examples are listed on this slide, and it basically means that you may correct the edit or enter an override reason on the student record. These overrideable edit examples are also on page 46 to 48 of Appendix C. Things like need amount is 0 with need-based aid. Your budget may have changed with dropped credits. These are just things you need to be aware of. And if you have a valid reason for overriding, then you will put that reason in the edit. Some reminders: keep your override comments concise and to the point. We do look at all of these, and we have to resolve them. So the more succinct you are, the better for us. We do need you to provide sufficient detail, though, so that we know what you're addressing and how. Report your family income using the SNG income calculation, not the federal total income field from the FAFSA. The income should match the income reported in the CSAW student record for the 2018-19 information. And just to give you a little more information, when you're calculating your family income for a dependent student, you count the parent's adjusted gross income and non-taxable income. You don't include the student's income for that family income. And conversely, when you're calculating the family income for an independent student, you count the student's AGI and non-taxable income, and if they're married, you count the spouses as well. For both dependent and independent students, if the AGI is not present, then you use the sum of all taxable plus non-taxable income for, if it's the parent, it's the parent, and if it's the student, it's the student. There are also some circumstances under which you may, but you're not required to subtract allowable exclusions. And these are taxable earnings from need-based employment programs such as federal work-study and need-based employment portions of fellowships and assistantships. Taxable student grant and scholarship aid reported to the IRS in the AGI. And this includes AmeriCorps benefits as well as grant and scholarship portions of fellowships and assistantships, untaxed combat pay or special combat pay, and earnings from work under cooperative education program offered by a college. Keep in mind that Title IV grant aid should be subtracted from the base income, regardless of if it's taxed or untaxed. Child support income must be excluded from income calculations for less than half-time students, but not from other enrollment categories, and that's something that is often missed. And keep in mind that veterans' benefits are treated in the same manner as for the purposes of eligibility for Title IV financial aid. Some more reminders. Report an adjusted expected family contribution according to the need duration if a student attended less than full-time, full year, if your standard practice is to do so. Need, COA, and duration must all be consistent. You might be getting the theme here that this is important to us because I think this is the fourth or fifth time in this presentation that we've talked about it. We'd also like you to report all known race categories for each student, even where Hispanic origin is marked Y. This eliminates gaps in the research data and helps us report information to our external communities and interested people. Tips and best practices, and this is my favorite one because this affects my life dramatically. Upload your CSV early. Please don't wait for the deadline. We mentioned that people start making requests for reports as early as November. I've been getting some requests for information from LEDGE staff as early as October, and it really puts pressure on us to get the information compiled as quickly as possible, and we can only do it if you all respond in timely fashion. Review the 2018-19 Unit Record Manual and training materials, and test your upload using the portal training environment. You can see the URL on this slide, and keep in mind, this is really a place for you to make sure things are being produced the way you want them to be produced. The data entered is temporary when you go to the portal training, and if you use this, keep in mind that overnight the information clears out. So you need to do your testing, make sure you're done, because if you think you're testing something when you go into it the next day in the portal training, it'll be gone. Use the unit record informational reports to check for consistency and validity. And for the CTCs, you need to review your SBCTC 2018-19 Unit Record Manual when it becomes available. And if you have any questions or problems not addressed in the manual, contact us. It could be an oversight, it could be something we need to be aware of. You will receive notification when the recorded session's been posted and is available for you to share with others. Any final questions that you may have before we go on to Anne?
Yeah, let me open the mic, and all righty. The mic is open if anyone has any questions they'd like to propose. Hearing none, I'm remuting everyone. I think most of you are familiar with the portal, and we have the address shown up there at the top of the screen. There is another way to get to the portal landing page, and that is through our WSAC main website by clicking the administration item on the menu tab, and then there is an item for the portal, and if you click that link, it takes you directly to this page as well. There are two ways to get into the unit record report. One is to click this item under the financial aid administrators column where it says unit record. when you will still be asked to work through a login screen, but it will then take you directly to the unit record. If you're working with more than one program, you may want to go through this main login page, login that's up in the right-hand corner. Once you've logged in, click on the home menu, select programs, and then unit record, which will take you to the welcome page. The first time you log in for the year, this is the screen that you'll see. And you would select your CSV file from your PC and click Proceed to Upload. If this is not the first time you've worked in your unit record for the year, when you re-log in, you won't see this welcome screen necessarily. It will take you to whatever step you last left off, whether it's ready to begin, in progress, or submitted. Once you've found your CSV file by clicking the Browse button, click the Upload button, you'll see a processing bar if you have a large file, and that will give you a sense of how long and how quickly the portal is processing your upload. If you have a very small file, this processing moves by so quickly you won't see it. Once your file is uploaded, it will tell you whether you have any major errors that prevent an upload. It will also tell you which row and what type of error is in your file. So if you see this, this means that you will have to discard your file. So you click your button here and then fix the errors that show up and then re-upload your file. If you have a large file and realize in the middle of that there is an error or you've selected the wrong file, you can click this discard upload, and that will just terminate that upload process in its tracks and delete your file so that you can select the correct file and get that uploaded. Once you have a successful upload, you'll see this little summary chart. Take a quick peek at it, make sure that it looks like the data that's shown there is reasonable. It's showing your population by their enrollment status. So if you are only a school that has a 2-year program, then you're only going to see freshmen and sophomore. Anyone with a 4-year institution will see some of these other items as well. Let me see here. Okay. While the portal is processing through your file, you will see your edits pop up. If it's still processing, you will see a refresh button, which you can click at any time just to kind of reload additional edits. While it's in that process, you can begin working on your edits. But once this refresh button goes away, you know that the entire file has been processed and all of your edits should be showing on this main screen. You can select how you process your edits. For the most part, most of the students will show up in a cluster by their names. And the same individual will have all of its edits show up together. However, if you prefer, to check out, say, all your birth dates are out of range or whatever, you can select that edit by this type. It's a drop-down box, or you can resort your edits by any one of these column headers. If you have a non-overrideable edit, you will not be able to proceed with your submission process. We suggest that those be processed first. You will note those by this little stop sign that shows in the overrideable edit column. In order to correct or edit any one of these student records, you would click on the Social Security number, and that will open up that particular student record. At the top of that student record, you will see the errors listed, and you have a couple of choices. You can go directly into the field to make the correction, or if you feel that the information you've already entered is correct and there is a reason for that you feel is valid, you can click this override button. So here, this screen shows that you can enter the field, make the change, whether it's one of these drop-down boxes or any one of the fields associated with the program. The same is true with that student demographics tab. Make sure once you've made your changes that you click this save button. If you neglect to do so, it will not retain your corrections. If you select the override button, a little pop-up box will show. You can enter your override comment there. Be sure at that point also to save that because otherwise it will not retain that override comment. And you can check later by hovering your cursor over this little round blue icon, and your comment will pop up in a little yellow box and show you. You can confirm then that the comment you entered is the correct one. Once you've processed all of your overrides from this main screen, you can go to this differences report. I do want to caution you, there are, if you click this one first, this will take you to a little bit separate part of the portal. It's more for review and not so much actual processing of your edits. But once you've had a look at that, come back out to this edit screen and click to continue, because that will then take you into this discrepancies screen where you can actually address some of the other information. In this particular case, if you've already addressed the override from that main menu, you will see a Y under the override requested column. That's your indicator that you've already looked at and addressed that edit, and you don't have to address that again. If, however, you see a blank, that is an edit that bypassed that initial major edit screen, and that does still need to be addressed. If you see very many of these, you may want to download the differences to a CSV so that you can address them, and then come back to this screen and actually edit the record. If you find that you have missing data, you can search to locate and edit that student record. Go back up to the main menu and click that search button. If instead you need to actually add a new record to the report, say you've recognized that you neglected to include a student, you go back out to this main edit screen and click the Add a New Unit Record to the report. That will open up a blank unit record. It has two tabs, and we ask that you fill out both tabs of information as completely as possible. And then make sure that you click the Save button. This screen shows you that second tab, which is where you report the program information. Across the top, you'll see the 5 different academic terms. Be sure that you use the drop-down and indicate whether what their enrollment status is. These are usually vertically shown on that secondary tab. We show them here on a horizontal level just so you can see them all at once. On this screen, you'll see the missing SNG Unserved Students report. This was new about 2 or 3 years ago. And the reason we include this is that, as Carla mentioned, you have your unserved students in Seesaw. If we do not see a unit record for a student that was included in your unserved list in Seesaw, those individuals will be listed here in this report. We ask that you take a quick look first and then identify those students perhaps where you recognize they may have indeed received aid, and in that event you would go back up to the main edit screen and select add a new unit record, go through that process where you complete both tabs of the blank record. For all others, we ask that you make those corrections, add whatever missing students. Once you've done that, that individual will disappear off of this missing SNG Unserved students, because these are only those students for whom you have not submitted a unit record. Okay? At that point, you would download the report to a CSV file. It will bring up this CSV report, an example of which is at the top of this page. I have highlighted those boxes where we would ask that you complete information. Any of these download columns that already have information, this is the information that we see in the Seesaw record, okay? We ask that you not override or write in those columns. The bottom is an example of a completed report. So any changes or comments that you make will be written in these columns. For example, in this one, Betty Bradley, if you look across her line, if there are no changes at all, if it's correct as shown, just place a yes in the yes if all terms okay column. You need to do nothing else with that record. On the other hand, in the case of Aaron Andrews, the Seesaw record shows that he was full-time for fall, full-time for winter, not enrolled for spring or summer. However, your records show that he actually was less than half-time for fall, half-time for winter, and perhaps full-time for spring. Those are the changes that you would need to note for us in this. The reason this is important is that your allocation is based on an accurate record of not only your served students, but your unserved. And this report gives us an understanding of how to address your allocation for the following year. So it is important that you complete this and get that back to us. How you would do that is, if you're in the correct discrepancies screen, you will see this yellow box, and it says send an email. That will open up a secure portal email to which you can attach that completed missing unserved report. When you send that to us, it comes directly to the unit record mailbox in a secure fashion, and then we will review that and get back to you if we have any questions. We're approaching the point at which you can submit your report. As Carla mentioned, if there are any Social security mismatches, and you might see those as you're going through your discrepancy reports for any one of these programs or in your missing unserved. An indicator will be if you see that same student listed with two different social numbers and an edit error, showing it in Seesaw in one area, but showing it as only in unit record. For those instances, if the error is on the unit record side, you are able to make that correction directly in that unit record, and it will clear that edit error. If, on the other hand, the incorrect identifier is in Seesaw, that will require assistance of the WSAC staff, in which case you would use the same send an email button to securely email that information to us. On that email, you would give us the name of the student, the correct Social Security or identifier, and the incorrect one. And then we will contact our IT staff to have that corrected on our end. Once that correction has been made, it should clear the edit from the unit record as well. The next to the last step from the actual submission is this program totals report. We indicate that it is a preliminary program total because it includes all the information for all of the records that you've submitted. We ask that you create a PDF of this page for your records after you have reviewed the comparison of the four columns. If there are any issues with the percentage change between years, you have an opportunity to go back into the unit record by returning to this edit list button and making those corrections. If everything else looks correct and valid, as I said, we ask that you take a PDF of this. It is a preliminary report. In January, when we produce the institutional profile reports, we will have deleted all the extraneous information. And by extraneous information, we're talking about records for those students who received only non-need-based aid and no federal loans. That may change the percentage changes between these last two columns. And if you make a copy of this page at this preliminary point and then again at the time of the profile reports being released, you'll have a comparison of what changes took place with the deletion of those records. It's sometimes helpful to have that for comparison's sake in the next year's unit record, just because as we're going through the review process, we're comparing you know, apples to apples. So hopefully we'll be looking at the preliminary reports compared to the preliminary reports rather than a final report in January to what you see in this preliminary. Okay, I've opened the mic. If anyone has a question about this and the review process, I'd be happy to entertain that. Well, hearing none, I'm going to remute and continue on. Okay. If everything looks good on this page, you've created your PDF, click to continue. And at this point, assuming that there are no other corrections or changes, you have a final opportunity to go back to that edit list. Otherwise, you can click submit your unit record report. You'll get a pop-up that asks if you are absolutely sure. If you click OK, that closes your unit record report from your end. If post-submission you realize you have other errors, please, please, please give us a call. We're more than happy to work with you and reopen the unit record for those corrections to be made. Otherwise, at this point, clicking that will give you all of these indicators that your unit record has been submitted. And at that point, you can log out of the unit record portal. As we mentioned earlier, in January, we will release the profile reports. At this particular point in time, you can go back in and take a look at any of your reports between the time of submission and January, and you'll see them right here if you need to take another look. The profile reports will actually show up down here. In January, this will be updated with all of that, with the extraneous information removed. We request that you make another copy of that report at that time. If you have any questions about working with your records, please give us a call. The unit record manual is available on the WSAC website now, as is a copy of the CSV header file. We suggest that if you need to get hold of us, the best email would be the unit record at wasac.wa.gov. And if you prefer to contact any one of us, our phone numbers and our direct emails are shown below. We ask that you use the unit record email only because it is monitored by all three of us. So in the absence of one or more of us, there is still someone to respond to you. Carla, do you have any?
No, the webinars will be recorded and posted in probably the next week for the first two sessions, one of the first two, and then at the end of the month, the recordings will be posted for the community and technical college specific sessions related to the two different operating systems they have. So with that, thanks for your time today, and please, again, make sure you reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you for attending. We look forward to working with you this year.